Now that we've mastered the use of the Obsidian Dawn brushes, we can go on to the more sophisticated method for creating lashes, and that is to create them yourself manually. Now this involves using the pen tool. If you don't know how to use the pen tool, I suggest you dig up a tutorial on how to use it before you dive in. If you just can't wait, follow along and I'll do the best I can to instruct you in the basics of using this rather tricky little tool as we go along. Okay, I've thrown away my upper eyelash layer and I'm going to make a new one first. We again need an empty new layer, and I'll just rename this upper lashes. And we need to choose our pen tool from the Photoshop work palette. Now there are a number of settings for the pen tool that we should set up before we get going here, and they are as follows. We need to choose the second icon from the top, which is to have it in path mode. We need to make sure that we've got our layer open and empty, that it's set to normal opacity, and we need to have our inkwell filled with black. A little extra thing that's a good thing to do before we begin is to go to your brush tool, give that a click, and check the brushes that are being used. Now, I was using eyelash brushes before. I'm going to change this back to a plain old regular brush, and I'm going to set up the diameter for this brush to 4 pixels. Now I'm using a very high resolution image here, so you'll need to determine what size is best for your particular job. You'll get to know what size is best through a bit of trial and error, but I'm now deciding what the size of my lashes is going to be when I use a brush to create them. So I'll just confirm that, and I'm pretty much ready to go. Now to start, I take the pen tool, just choose it one more time, set to path mode, and I'm going to zoom right in here so we can really get in nice and close and see how this is going to work. I'm just going to use an existing eyelash here to copy. So I'm just going to start here, and I click and drag because I'm making a curve, and it's going to follow the curve of this lash. So I'll just click here, then drag it up, and that creates the curve that follows that lash. Okay, having done that, I can now go over to the tool palette and I'm going to choose the path selection tool. Now by choosing the path selection tool, I can now move this around anywhere else. And the thing for creating these manual lashes is you're trying not to spend enormous amounts of time doing it. You're trying to save some time if possible. So instead of making lots of different ones, cut and paste them into place. Okay, now to do this copy and pasting, make sure you've got your black arrow tool. This is only for path objects, is active, that the path that you've drawn up with your pen tool is active as well. And then it's just a matter of copy and paste. So I'll just go edit copy. You can of course use all of the keyboard shortcuts, Command C or Control C. And now that it's copied, we just paste in. So I'll go edit, paste. Nothing seems to happen, but that's because it places it directly on top of the old one. And I'll paste again. And there's another one. And I'll just start using keyboard shortcuts here just to make this move along a little bit more quickly. And one more. I think that'll do. You'll get the idea after doing a few of these. All right, so we've quickly copied these up. They all look identical, so they need a little bit of finessing so they will fit in with the eyelash areas that they're going into. So I'm going to go back to the tool palette and I'm changing to this white arrow tool, which is called direct selection. Now the direct selection tool is an interesting little creature because we use this to change the shape as well as the position of existing paths. So I'm going to move this one down to here, let's say, and now I need to start moving it around. So I'll just move away from the path, click one time. Now I can go over onto its point and I can start to move it around. Now by moving points, this will change the location of where it ends or where it begins, depending if you've got this point or this point. If you want to change its angle, you can use these little handles, which you can use to twist and turn the actual curve. If you want to be really clever, go right onto the curve itself and just click and drag, and you can move several of these handles at the same time. All of the methods are perfectly great for getting it to look just the way you want it to. So I'll just fool around with this a little bit, so that looks good for me. That'll do for that one. And I'll just move this one over here. Just move that into position. Move this one into position. And that's about right. Once again, same here. Small changes I'm making here. I'm moving the handles around, just twisting the angles a little bit. Just trying to get it to look a little bit different from each one, so they're not all rubber stamp looking. They're not all machine copies. They all look a little bit different. Yep, 2 to go. Just drag that one over here. Also a good idea, use the existing eyelashes that are down there to help guide you to put them in the right position. It will save you a lot of grief rather than trying to figure it all out yourself, which can be a little bit tough sometimes. Just move it over a bit here. Yeah, I think I can just about live with it. That'll do for now anyway. This is just to get you started. You will have to make several of these and get them into position, but here's how it works once you've got them in place. Switch back to your black path selection tool, and we're going to pick each one of these. So that's click on the first one, hold down Shift so you can select more of them, and pick the whole bunch. I'm just clicking on each one to select them. They're all active. Make sure your upper lash layer, which is currently empty, is available. It's set to normal. It's set to 100% opacity. Black ink. As we did before, we've set up the brushes so we know how it's going to paint. So here's where we go and change our palette to the path palette, which shows us a work path. The work path is these active paths that we've drawn in. And we need to stroke them. We're going to stroke them with the brush tool. Click on the fly out, and you might not be able to see that fly out, so I'll just drag over here so you can see that. I'll just move over there. Whoops, try that again. Just move this over a bit so we can see that. So I'll click on the fly out, and we want to stroke path. That is stroke path. It's going to paint it. And it brings up this little box. It tells us what tool we're going to be using, and yes, we want to use the brush. We went to all the trouble to set it up, so we do want to use the brush. And we want to simulate pressure. This is the most important part of the whole thing. It's going to give us a nice taper effect for the beginning and the end of the stroke. Okay, now that we're ready, I'll just move the camera back into position and we can see the magic happen, I hope. Click on OK. Ooh, that looks nice. And I'll just click off the work path so we can see what's going on. Look at that. It's very impressive the way it does this because it's really very, very convincing. Even if you haven't done particularly good shapes, which I must admit I haven't worked too hard on these shapes, but it's still pretty darn good. I'll go back to the layers palette and now we can get the thing to blend in. Once again, I'm going to change my blending mode from normal to multiply. I'm sure you're getting sick of hearing me say multiply, 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 but I like it. I think it works well. Dial up the opacity to the appropriate level so it fits in with the other existing lashes, and in this case it needs only about 70%. And if appropriate, a little bit of Gaussian blur to blend it in. I think maybe in this case it might not need any at all, but let's just have a quick look. Filter blur, Gaussian blur. Got that set to 0.3. 0.2. In this case, 0.2 seems about right. And say OK. And there you go. Before and after. It's really surprising how good a job you can do at making eyelashes with a little bit of practice. Now, if you find that individual lashes don't seem to have turned out as well as they could have, erase them, or do as I do here, just grab a lasso tool and select the ones that aren't really giving you much joy and then transform them. I'm using Control T for this. Just to spin them around, reposition them, until you get them in the way you want them. You can also manipulate, of course, the original paths. They're back on the paths palette to activate it and continue making more lashes. So there you go. This particular method, you can use this to create false eyebrow hair as well, or regular hair. It's a very versatile little function and well worth your time learning how to use the pen tool to create these eyelashes.